help me pass my belt. Cut my steak for me.
What about that? He doesn't get to drive.
But he's learning. But God, that's a class 1 miracle that God saved his life. He was dead, and they brought him back to life.
And don't.
Can't go until the house is clean.
Well, welcome to Lighthouse Testimonies. We're glad that you're here today, and for those of you that don't know anything about Lighthouse, I'll share with you just real quick that this is a ministry that started in 2000, Lighthouse Mission Ministry, and it's a prison ministry. It started while I was in prison. I was incarcerated from 1998 through 2007. During that time, that was my seminary. This is my prison Bible. I like to keep it right here close to me. I don't use it much today. Every now and then I'll pull it out, but it's very, very close and dear and personal to me. So we keep it right here in the drawer of the pulpit. But again, the way this church started is we're going into the counties and the prisons, and there kept being people that would say, where's your church? You know, and I said, well, we don't have a church, but we used to have a prison ministry, and said, well, if you had a church, we'd come to it. So we felt God was calling us to open up a church, and so we did, and we ran for a while there out of Motel 6 banquet room, you know, and they let us borrow their slogan, we'll leave the light on for you. Anyhow, we had a good time there through 2015, and then on a February day, there was a man that came across and visited from across town. It was a very cold, icy day, and I even prayed, you know, Lord, do you want me to have this service or not? And he's going to go ahead and have it, so I did. And anyhow, their church had postponed their service or canceled it, and so he just went driving around. He said, Lord, you show me where to go today. And he pulled him right into our place there at Motel 6 and our service, and he took it in. He liked it, and about, that was in February and September, he called me up and he said, hey, we're fixing to close the door of the church, and he said, we're fixing to give everything away. Are you interested? And I said, well, absolutely, I'm interested, you know. And he said, well, when can we meet? And I said, how about 30 minutes? So anyhow, we went across town, and we took over a spot there right next to Baker's Donuts. And we operated there till, when was it, Miss Linda? When did we come over here?
January 1st of
23? 23, been here 2 years.
Yeah.
So been right here in 2 years. We're the only church, well, we might not be the only church now with a bar in it. We used to could say that.
Yeah.
We used to could say that.
They got a bar in ours.
Anyhow, we serve the pure life water. So.
There you go.
Y'all need a water, just feel free to step up there and get a water. The restrooms are right here in the hall. We're pretty free here, you know, to just do whatever. But we're here today to do hear the testimony of Amanda, and I'm glad you're here for her support, and we're looking forward to supporting her as well. Back, I don't know, toward I was just here a while back, before the first of the year, 6 months ago or whenever. How long have we been doing this? A year? The Lord put it on my heart to.
We've been doing it since
32, a couple of years ago. Time travels fast, doesn't it? The Lord put it on my heart to just open up for testimonies. And, you know, the devil doesn't like it. Revelations 12, verse 10 says, the accuser of the brethren. You know, he's accusing night and day. And then it goes on and says in Revelations 12:11, it says, but they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, even unto death. And it's just my feelings and my thoughts, but it saddens me that we as church bodies all across don't open it up more for testimonies. And I think it's been the trick of the devil. I mean, to keep us from giving our testimonies. You look at that scripture and said, overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Well, you're talking about a lot of power right there, because we know there's power in the blood. Amen. You know, we've all been forgiven of our sins because of that blood. There's a lot of power there. And then the word of our testimony goes with that. You know, if you've been forgiven and you've been reconciled to God by Jesus Christ, we need to be telling people about it. Well, the whole idea is that if we can come in a small setting like this and have the support of people, you know, and give our testimony and bear ourselves for the glory of the Lord Jesus Christ, then that's a start. And then what happens is, you know, to understand that God puts us all in His business. So we're out there in the field during the week, you know, we might have the opportunity to share a part of our testimony with somebody, and they get free. They be free from bondage. They be free from whatever. They get help that they need at that time. And so I'm one of those too that believes that we're all called to minister. You know, we're all called to minister. We're called to minister the gospel. And what better way to do it but through our own experience? You know, because, you know, the difference between, you know, all the other gods and our God is that our God is one that has, you know, risen from the dead, and our God is the one that's chosen to be personal to each and every one of us. So to have a personal relationship with each one of us. I know that He's done that with Amanda, and we're just excited today that she's stepping up to the plate. We invite any of you who want to share your testimony. This church is open on, you know, for Sunday afternoons. Okay, and we have a sign-up sheet here, and on the top of it, it says, take the opportunity to stomp on the devil. Okay, he's a defeated enemy and foe. He's caused a lot of ruckus in the lives of people, and in a lot of in our lives, and we have the opportunity when we give the testimony, put our foot on his neck, by the power and everything that has been done through Jesus Christ for us. So if you would like to give your testimony here, you're welcome to do that. We invite it, and you can just sign up on the sign-up sheet, and we'll look forward to hearing your testimony and watching you, you know, take a step closer to the Lord, take a step, you know, a little bit more over our enemy. And you know, when I came to the Lord with my full surrender, you know, I had a lot of things I needed to get rid of, and one of the things that I had in me was hate. You know, I'd hated some things and some people, and the Lord said, you can't do that anymore. And He said, but you can hate the devil, you can hate evil. And so all the hate I had in me got generated to Him, and I get plumb fired up about testimonies, because I know it's an opportunity for that person to get their foot on the devil's neck, you know. And it's so hard for us sometimes to understand how much He's defeated in our behalf by Jesus Christ. But we get a little bit more of a glimpse of it when we give our testimony. So today I'm just really thrilled, Amanda, that you've stepped to the plate and you're going to give your testimony. You're going to share with us. And I know the Lord's with you through His blessed Holy Spirit, and you're going to bless us with what you got to say today. Okay? So come up and bless us, okay?
That's not. Okay, I was gonna do music and all that, but I'm emotional, so we're not gonna. And also, I have a very, very strong fear of doing things wrong, so I typed it all out. And Mom, sorry, it's really long. I'm very wordy. So if I'm reading, I'll tell y'all why in a second. I chose to do it this way. When someone lovingly began nudging me to give my testimony a few weeks ago, I protested. I've only given my testimony one time, and some of y'all were there. And to be honest, it was bitter, it was angry, and it was very self-fulfilling. I was not at all focused on look what God has done, even though that was what I wanted others to get from it. It's taken over a decade and a lifetime of small and large failures to reach the point I'm at today. I've told Toby several times over the past month, I don't feel like I'm past my bad yet. See?
Yeah.
Okay. My sin wasn't cool. My sin was worse than a lot of people's. My story is ugly and nasty, and I'm still facing the consequences, or will face the consequences of it when God's ready for me to. So I don't feel like I'm worthy of giving my story yet until I get to the other side. As some have seen on my social media posts recently, I've agonized, worried, cried, and stressed over how to give my testimony. How can I explain how I ended up where I did without explaining what exact actions in my life and those around me led me to become who I became? A few years ago, my oldest daughter asked me, "Mom, why don't you think you deserve better? You never think you deserve any good." Both of my girls at different points in life have asked me, "Mom, why do you think so little of yourself?" I'm very, very good at putting myself down and telling you my very worst traits. I have no problem standing before you and telling you all I've done wrong in my life. But the why and the events that led to it, that causes me great trepidation, not for me, but for them, for those I love. My children. I don't want to cause any more hurt, embarrassment for them, and I'm not sure what they'll think of or how they'll perceive me in telling what I've learned over the past year as it affects them when I speak of family they love and of a life before them that they never saw. Our youngest daughter gave me a bookmark once. It had a list of mother written out on it, and it described me with words for each one of the letters. The one that stuck out the most was very open. I've always been somewhat of an embarrassment to them, so to start giving my testimony brings back thoughts of our girls. And I don't want to be too open and risk hurting them further. My parents and my family. There's a lot our family doesn't talk about openly. We come from long lines on both sides of not really talking about the nitty-gritty or ugly parts in public. We live by Old Testament law a lot of times and skip over the fixing of what is wrong. We live by just do good and don't address the bad in public. Fear of hurting others by giving specifics of my childhood that were relevant to my personality flaws would mean coming clean on things that we aren't ready to speak about. I'm weighed down by how to present my story without giving the events that were pivotal in my development and embarrassing my family more than I already have. I have zero anger. I have no bitterness or hurt over any of my life, and I don't want my story to fall on ears that only see or hear the parts that Satan used to help form me. My T, my biggest supporter. I worry about how to tell parts of our story without bringing up hurt, blame, or shame that stem from our past. We have both grown, learned, and overcame a lot in each of our lives. I have failed him in more ways than I can count as a significant other, as a wife many years ago, and as a sister in Christ and as a friend. I don't want people to hear our story and only see the bad anymore. It's not about what happened, but what we've learned from it, and that's where the focus needs to be. In true codependent fashion, I was so worried last night I stayed up till after 1, tweaking my words, editing, praying, changing parts of how I speak. My obsessive need for perfection in how I present all of this is in full force. Then I woke up this morning with a peace and a calmness and a we are ready mindset. God gave me a couple of Bible verses that I've added. He used friends yesterday to send me words of confirmation of the me I'm becoming, the me that is fully Him. Words of affirmation that what I've put in this testimony are indeed lessons that He's taught me over the past year. And words of peace. I'm doing His work, not mine, and He's happy with that. This morning, 3 different things I read. He confirmed I am indeed on the right path. God is so good in His love and grace for me. John 7:17 says, if any man will do His will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. And while I feel more at peace about it than I have in months, Satan is still trying to have me feel insecure, unworthy, and scared, but I know it's time. So a couple of things before I get started. I may not make a lot of eye contact because I'm very awkward and I'm shaken, and I also have this thing where I look at any facial expression or any movement and I internalize it, and then I'm going to agonize over it for weeks. So if I don't look at y'all, that's why, because I'm awkward. And I second guess every word I say, which is why I've typed it out. And I have a fear of doing this all wrong. My Carrie Jo has watched me a lot of times get up and speak in front of people. I'm not afraid of public speaking. I am afraid of doing it for myself now and not for God, which I've done my whole life. I have a fear of making people mad or hurting them and facing repercussions later. And I don't want anyone to think I'm specifically talking about them and hurt them. So please know that as I move forward, it is out of love, it is out of growth, it is out of things that I've learned. It is not out of shame or anger or bitterness. Okay, I'm going to skip all the rest of this because this is already going way longer than I wanted. What I've learned slowly over the past year and in great detail the past 3 to 6 months is that life is 99% based on perception. Your perception of events that happen based on your own personal feelings, emotions, reactions, and interpretation of others' tone, language, body language, and behavior compared to what the other person's perception of any given situation is very, very different. Therefore, in my opinion, it is a common factor in most disagreements, hurt feelings of who is right and who is wrong. You can have 2 people live life together day to day and have 2 completely different perceptions of what happens in that life. It doesn't make either one more powerful. It doesn't make either person more at fault or one more victimized. So who's correct in their interpretation? Both sides are, because it affected both sides equally. It doesn't matter who hurt who or who did what. Both people in any given type of relationship battle with fear, anger, hurt, disappointment, and a plethora of emotions that may be hiding. Even if someone is at fault, God may be taking that person through something, or they may have experienced something greater than just this moment that caused them to do what they did. God is teaching each person different lessons, weaving them together to touch others' lives in ways we never realize because we're so focused on our own hurt and our need to blame. It would be really easy for me to stand here and give you all the instances of any time I've ever been hurt, made a fool of, mocked, yelled at, threatened, abandoned, cheated on, lied to, lied about, talked about, ignored, judged, betrayed, shamed, blamed, guilted, or wronged. I could list out all the things done to me and that I have done, and name things of people who have hurt or affected me, who have, as today's society says, emotionally abused me. I have been offended mentally, verbally, spiritually by enemies, loved ones, friends, and family. I could name people and give examples and tell you stories all day that haunt me and that I continue to allow to hurt me over and over. But something that has been prevalent on my heart as I've prepared this testimony is how quick and how often we as people today need to blame someone. Either someone else or ourselves. We are constantly taught and pressed to do this in almost every social media post, every conversation we have with family and friends, in therapy, in church. Blame is everywhere as justification for how we were wronged and as justification of our own reactions and behaviors to what happened. The need to be right or have the upper hand to justify our punishing others has overtaken our world in a way that is heartbreaking to me. We justify ourselves in finding wrong in others because we don't agree with or like the fact of something they said or did, or because we don't agree with how they act or react to life. As I went to therapy last year, I sought answers often to why am I like this? What has happened to me at different points in life that caused me to become this person? I had come to a place in life where everything came to a head in a perfect storm. My past hurt, trauma, disappointment, and deep wounds met up with my shame, my guilt, my desperation of where I found myself and the sin I had allowed to overtake me. What I've learned the past few months that I pray I can have the strength to carry with me the rest of my life is that my focus in life has been astronomically misconstrued. My therapist, a Christian therapist who looks not only at the science of therapy in mind, but also God's instruction in life, taught me a very valuable lesson. God then took that and has pounded it with me for the past year, despite my frequent rebuttals to him. It doesn't matter who did what to me. It doesn't matter what was done to me. It doesn't matter where or when the offense happened. My therapist often ticked me off when I would pour my heart out saying he or she did this or he or she did that. She would look at me and ask, okay, but what did you do? I know examples of what has been done to us are necessary in certain situations or to reiterate a point to the magnitude of the lesson and to learn and grow from the wrong actions. There will be times for specifics. Today is not that day for me. Today and hopefully the rest of my life, I want to choose to acknowledge and correct my own behavior, my own actions, and my own reactions based on God's direction, not my own intent or the expectations of anyone around me. What ultimately matters the most is the lesson in it all. What matters is how I allowed it to affect me, what I did or did not learn from God's lesson that He had for me in any given situation. I saw a video recently from Stephen Furtick, a pastor at a megachurch, and he said this: 1 Peter 5:8 states, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." It does not state that he devours us. It says that he is seeking someone to devour us. While God allows us to be attacked, He protects us from actually being devoured. But it is our response to the attack that is what matters. So as I stand before you today, I pray that you, and I have been praying for the past year, that people who hear me speak and hear my story from here on out see the heart of where I come from. A place of peace, not anger. A place of growth, not bitterness. A place of love, not of regret. A place where I don't need to forgive others because they are already forgiven. And that anyone who listens to me will know that I'm thankful for every lesson I have lived through in my life. It has all brought me to a place of utter dependence on God, not on the circumstances or situations that occur around me. My family, as I grew up, by all accounts, I had an amazing childhood. I was born to parents who loved me, with an older brother who barely tolerated me, but he was silently more protective and loving of me than even my parents were. Both sets of grandparents were married young, and their love lasted their entire lives. I was saved when I was 9 years old in the office of our church pastor at Lingleville. I went to the same church from the time I can remember until my early teens, attended First Baptist for a bit, and landed at Valley Grove Baptist Church. I have no memory of not ever being in church until my early 20s. As a child, Mom and Dad will agree with this. I was feisty and sort of opinionated. I was drawn to the outdoors from the time I could walk. I grew up on an exotic game ranch where my dad worked on in exchange for us a place to live. It was magnificent. I would spend my non-school days running around pastures, swimming in ponds, building forts, climbing trees, riding my horse, climbing hay bales, and performing on my stage in our barn in my Wonder Woman outfit or my Daisy Dukes. Singing my favorite song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places, or daydreaming of Prince Charming in my strawberry shortcake bedroom. From the time I was a teenager to today, my favorite movie of all time has been Pretty Woman. The foreshadowing has just recently hit me. I wanted to be a prostitute in Daisy Dukes, whose Prince Charming climbed a ladder to rescue her as she sings Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. All in all, I look back on my childhood with love and warmth. I've never looked back on my childhood and wished we had been richer, lived somewhere different, or that I had different experiences or a different family. I was in church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, VBS, GA, Sunday school, church summer camps, every revival, Bible study, and Sunday school class offered. I grew into a preteen who worked in the church nursery until I went to college. As a teen, I not only attended youth camp, but started in my mid-teens being a counselor at camps for younger kiddos, teaching Bible studies, and later in life I went on to be a children's minister, a women's ministry director, a preteen ministry leader, and active in every possible way I could see fit to help me feel accepted and approved of. When I was about 15 or 16, I stood before the congregation at church and made a promise to God that I would commit my life to doing His work He had called me to do. I believed life was good, and I wanted to just do good for God. From my early to mid teen years, my life consisted of church and then led to church and sports. I sang in church from the time I was old enough to join the choir. I sang specials on Sunday mornings, performed in plays at church, helped with children's choir, VBS, church nursery, as well as other functions. I was also one of the taller kids in my grade and wore a size 9 shoe by the time I was in the 3rd grade. My little spider monkey doesn't know what that's like.
No, I don't.
And thanks to having an older brother I often beat up, I was tougher than nails, at least in attitude. This all led me naturally to playing basketball by the 5th grade. By the time I hit high school, I was on the varsity. By the end of my freshman year, lettered in cross country and track my freshman year, and was a cheerleader through my junior year. When I wasn't active in sports, I was at church. As far as activities go, I was content. People praised me for being so good at sports and at church. I believed it was me they loved and the me that they praised, and it made me feel special to succeed and hear that validation. I had friends throughout childhood and teens, but we lived at Lingleville and I went to Stephenville school, so sleepovers and BFFs were not the same for me as everyone else. When I was 13, we moved from Lingleville to outside of Stephenville, but I had no kids my age that were my neighbors. I had a ton of friends at school and one really close friend around junior high, but I never had a true best friend. I had friends from my athletic teams, but I never did anything outside of sports with them. My youth group friends I was with so much at church, but never cultivated into meaningful lifelong friendships because few of them had the same interests and none of them played sports. My first true best friend was my junior year in high school. We were inseparable little wallflowers. Throughout my adult life, I had friends come and go. I stayed in touch with some from all our school years and periodically made some friends at college, but never long term. Men. Ugh. I always had more guy friends than girlfriends. I was called a flirt often, and I had plenty of guys flirt with me, but very few that wanted to date me. I wasn't allowed to date until I was 16, and on my 16th birthday, I had 3 guys at school bring me gifts and ask me out. I felt wanted for the first time like I'd always dreamed of. However, throughout high school, I never went out with one guy more than once. I was really only asked out on a few dates over the 4-year time period. The first date was all I needed to know they weren't the one. I didn't think of them, any of them were cute. I didn't click with their personalities, and I always wait until I was married to have sex and never truly felt like any of them wanted more than that. I also had zero desire for any of them, and none of the guys I had crushes on gave me the time of day. I began to know the feelings of being unwanted, undesired, unworthy. However, I didn't recognize that back then. I thought I was confident and outgoing and just hadn't found the one I cared to date. I never looked back and studied how I truly felt then until recently. So how did I go from all things church, the little good girl, to a bottom of the barrel thief? You've heard all the good in my life, but over the past year, due to my own sins and reflection, learning and digging to get to the root of who I became a few years ago, I discovered how I got to a point in life that I believed what I believed, felt how I felt, and why I became who I became. Like I said, I was a fairly happy child. However, after studying it now, I see and remember from a very early age feeling empty, lost, and unsettled. There are things from my childhood that I believe started stirring things deep within me that ultimately led me to the personality I developed in my teen and early adult life. Insecurity, fear, depression, a weightiness that no child should carry, but I didn't know it was there. I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to talk about it. The feelings of never being enough to make those around me happy, although it felt like it was my job to provide their happiness. The responsibility was there, I remember, of always appearing to have it together, even when you are crumbling inside. The perception that we are never allowed to talk about the bad in life, only present our good to everyone around us. I have craved peace since I was a young child. I remember I used to lay in bed crying and praying just for peace before I ever knew what peace was. Since I was a little girl, I just wanted people to get along. And looking back, I feel like I've walked on eggshells most of my life, starting at a very young age. I believe this is where my obsessive people-pleasing began. Throughout my years in church, I was seen as outgoing, godly, and loved by everyone. As I got older and life happened, I noticed things that started breaking my spirit. Pastors who were wife beaters, pastors cheating on their wives with their wives' best friends, men and women who acted one way in church and another way at home or in public, men and women in church gossiping about me rather than speaking to me, lifelong church friends turning on you on a dime because they don't like something you did or who you dated. I saw that the men in the church weren't as apt to have women lead in any capacity, much less women who have opinions. I had women who I saw as jealous try and douse my excitement for what I had planned for the group I was leading. I had men downright shut me down and use their power over the women of the church because they didn't deem the type of people I wanted to reach as a group they wanted to reach. I had men who used their position within the church to subdue and force women to things such as coffee socials rather than studying about abused women. I saw hypocrites, backbiters, cheaters, liars, and everything in between. My view of church and its members became jaded, and I learned quickly, behave in the manner they demand, or get talked about, kicked out, shut down, or reprimanded. My best friend from high school and I began to drift apart in college. She lived on campus and I did not. I had to work and attend school. Her work was at school. She made new friends. I did not. I had one girl I started playing ball with when we were in the 5th grade, and we were only 2 seniors left our senior year. We were bonded through our athleticism. She asked me in '97 to be a bridesmaid in her wedding, and within a few months after learning of my new relationship, she met me at a public park and told me I wasn't Christian enough to stand on the stage with her at her wedding. When I was turning 30, my mom asked me what I wanted for my big day. I told her I wanted to rent a cabin in the middle of nowhere, invite some friends over for the weekend, and just hang out. I invited 4 or 5 girls from my school years, and within a few weeks, the plans had changed from what I wanted to do to a day spent shopping at a place they all wanted to go. I remember my mom asking if I was okay with it, and I said, If I don't do it, then I'll just be alone on my birthday. As an adult, after I was remarried, I became friends with a girl quite a bit younger than me, who I had been there for during some of the worst parts of her life, and she and mine. We became best friends and remained that way for 15 years. Until my decision to stay with the man I loved became too much for her, and she told me how hurt she was that I picked him over her and my own children. The only friend who has loved me my entire life, despite all my flaws, is still a friend to this day. I learned early and through adulthood that everyone else disappears when you wanted to do the things they don't enjoy, but they always expect you to do the things they enjoy. You live your life according to their expectations, or they find other friends. I learned again that doing what others want or need over your own joy is crucial to having relationships. I entered college irritated that I was forced to stay home, stuck in Stephenville and not going to tech, and remember feeling a cloud around me start to emerge. But my life wasn't bad, so I never expressed it to anyone that I can remember. I had always been outgoing, fun, energetic, a go-getter, and fiercely independent. So I continued to be just that while not having a clue about what I was supposed to be doing or who I was meant to be. I was going to school, started working full-time, and I realized how cool it was to work more hours and have more money for the bar, so I began working more and paid less and less attention to school. I remember once thinking about the fact that everyone was so sure of what they wanted to do in life, but I had no clue. I think at this time I really started battling depression, but it didn't have the picture of what I had been taught depression was, so I never considered it as a possibility. Excuse me, that's a lot of words. To this day, I've never been with a man who didn't cheat on me or use me to some degree. As a girl with no womanly shape, an ugly little duckling, this was crucial in the development and progression of my insecurity and codependency. My first real boyfriend was when I was 18, in the first year of college. It only lasted 4 months because he started talking to his ex-girlfriend while we were together. I was waiting for marriage and he was not. He got back together with her and then broke up with me over the phone. I remember sitting in the kitchen at our church crying and feeling unwanted and unworthy. I was not pretty enough, sexual enough, or smart enough to be loved. It was the first time I acknowledged feeling unworthy. I cried for months over him. Next came my first sexual encounter. I worked with a guy. We were friends, went to the bar and got drunk. He drove me to his house instead of back to my car. When we made out, he told me, "You can't take a guy this far and not go all the way." He did not force himself on me, but I also didn't stick to my protested no. I allowed him to change my mind, so I was officially welcomed into the Never Say Never Club. I went home feeling like a whore, having broken my covenant and made with God to fulfill my need of being desired and my lack of standing up for my principles. My next boyfriend was a friend of my brother's, seemed like a great guy, honored my wishes to not have sex until married since I was upset over my first encounter. He then slept with a prostitute while drunk overseas because he couldn't wait. I once again learned that without sex, men won't truly love you like they claim to do. When he gave me a promise ring and promised to marry, with tears in his eyes, I accepted him, his apology, and his promise. The next guy was the man I would cheat on with this boyfriend with. Another never say never moment. One night, this is my favorite part. Well, sorry. One night I was at City Limits and this way out of my league guy came up to me and told me how he would get so many brownie points with his mom if I would go out with him. Apparently she and I went to church together. I told him I would go out with him if he came to church the next morning with me. He was a no-show the next morning.
Who was it?
Mr. Man, yeah, Mom remembers. In my brain, I noticed then that sex was a must, church was a deterrent, and if you want them to like you, you have to do what they want despite your own reservations. Family, church, friends, kids, men. It seems that there was a constant theme in my life, or at least how I perceived it. Behave how they deem acceptable and pleasing, or get yelled at, punished, or left. My whole life, all I wanted was just to be loved for me, not for how I acted, not for the words that left my mouth, and if others deemed them as right or wrong, not for others agreeing with my behaviors, my likes, or my actions. I just wanted to be accepted for being me, loved for being me. Fast forward to April 12th, 1997, 3 years after graduating high school. Anybody remember Bullfest? Carrie Jo does. We were at Bullfest. My friends and I had agreed to meet that out-of-my-league boy from City Limits and his friends. He led me to the dance floor at one point, and we walked off the dance floor holding hands. I knew my life had changed forever. That night he said to me, "I hope you know you're stuck with me for a long time now." I had absolutely zero clue how powerful those words would be and where life would take us. All I knew was that as I lay there beside him while he slept, I felt a pull I didn't understand. A pull I would not understand until 28 years later. A bond I had never felt. A feeling so deep within my soul, I couldn't comprehend it. And after thinking to myself how gorgeous he was, I thanked God for him. I was baffled. How could I have just had, sorry honey, premarital sex with a guy I had just met, and now I was thanking God for him? 3 days later, he moved in with me. Never say never? Check. A week later, I broke up with my current boyfriend over the phone. Irony. In the fall of 1997, he moved to Arizona to attend golf school, and with months, I packed everything I could fit into my car, pawned my jewelry for gas money, and as a 21-year-old young woman, despite protests from my parents and a rather colorful, tearful goodbye with my mom, sorry, never apologized for that, I drove straight through the night and moved to be with him in Arizona. In December '98, we had our first child. 2 months later, we were back in Texas. In 2000, we had our second child despite not living together while I was living with my parents. April 2nd, 2001, we were married by proxy while he was in the county jail. A month later, he got out of jail, and after seeing me, left to go be with another woman. Within a month of marrying this out-of-my-league man, we were separated and on the road to divorce. Later that year, he was sentenced to a very long vacation by the state and federal government. He told me he didn't want me tied to him and to go live my life. I found myself as a single mom of 2 babies, living with my parents at the age of 23, not good enough for the love of my life who was in prison, and a failure by all accounts to everyone who loved and knew me. My good Christian little life, full of hopes and romantic dreams, were now non-existent. At that point in time, all I knew was that part of my heart was in prison, and the rest of my heart was inside the 2 greatest blessings God had given us. Life as a single mom was difficult, to say the least. I tried school a few times, but working full-time and having 2 part-time jobs while going to school, it didn't go well. As a single mom, I was not only heartbroken for me, for our girls, for Toby, despite us getting divorced, and at life, but I was also scared. The man I wanted to love and support didn't want me, in my eyes. My parents were constantly disappointed in me, friends and family constantly telling me what I deserved despite my own heart's desire. My kids depended on me, and I was not worthy of fulfilling all they deserved. I had no friends. Most had left due to my relationship. And my extended family constantly said things to undermine my love, put expectations on me I didn't believe I was capable of, and downplay my feelings, my dreams, and my wants. But seeing as how I was outgoing, always strong, that capable girl that could handle anything, I didn't let my fear, sadness, or heartache show. Instead, it came out in bursts of anger, stubbornness, defensiveness, and blindly existing day to day, trying to please or fool everyone, including myself. I love my children more than I love breathing. And I couldn't understand. Sorry. I couldn't understand what caused me to scream at them and feel such deep sadness when I looked at them and experienced such internal turmoil. They were so little and so confused and sad at why Daddy had left. And now they had a mom that was full of anger, bitterness, rage, hurt, depression, and not getting the help or even acknowledging all the emotions within her. I remarried in 2007 when the girls were 6 and 7 to the first guy I dated after my Toby. I was not attracted to him. He got on my nerves. One daughter couldn't stand him most of the time, and the other daughter just used his attention to fill the gap of never having a father she had known. I tried to back out and was told by a family member, "You can't do better than him, so don't F it up." The night before the wedding, I was told by my maid of honor that it was just cold feet and I'd get past it because he's a great guy and he's what I deserve. I went through with it knowing the additional paycheck would help me in raising my girls the best way I could and better than I was doing on my own as a single mom, ignoring the sadness in my oldest daughter's eyes as she knew this wasn't her dad and didn't care. The night of my wedding, I laid in bed crying, thinking of that out of my league boy who stole my heart all those years ago. We were in marriage counseling by year 3, again at year 7, and for 10 years I lived in a cloud of his addictions, his lack of leading as a spiritual leader, and my own refusal to acknowledge what was happening inside of me. By year 9, my daughters were 16 and 17. Our oldest daughter gets a letter. It had a picture in it. After she went to bed, I stole the picture, and I cried as I looked at the man I still loved and thought to myself, "Oh crap, I'm in trouble." She and her dad communicated over the next year as his release date approached. I had lied to myself for 10 years, had tried to convince everyone who knew me that I hated him, but under the veil of wanting us to be civil so that when he was released we could get along for the girls' sake, I began corresponding with him. We had one daughter who wanted nothing more in this entire world than to have a relationship she had always dreamed of with her father, and one who wanted nothing to do with him at all. We needed to at least be a united front. We began writing. My first words to him were, "I'm still pissed." When his release came up, I wouldn't allow my 18-year-old daughter and her sheltered boyfriend to go pick up this man from prison in Houston, Texas, so I accompanied him. When I saw him, I knew then my life was about to change again forever. 3 months later, I began my divorce, and by July the next year, we were living together. There is not a single book on the planet that can help felons or loved ones of felons with post-release life. The next 6 years were a chaotic mess of him trying to adjust, me trying to help him adjust, which is a joke because there's no way in Hades I could ever understand what this man was thinking, feeling, dealing with, or trying to overcome or adjust to. We were trying to navigate life, prison mentality, my hidden issues I'm about to get into, finances, kids transitioning into adulthood, and marriage and parenthood. Everything else that this thing called life threw at us. During this time, one daughter got married and had a baby. One daughter was graduating high school and heading into adulthood. The kids were reeling from mom's adultery and divorce and getting back with their estranged father, all while he was starting a business from scratch and I was oblivious to my multitude of insufficiencies. Weddings, broke college kids, the need to provide, take care of everyone, and never ask for help eventually caught up to me. I had a good job that paid well, but it wasn't enough to cover my inability to say no to anyone I loved for fear of them leaving if I didn't provide. A daughter who had gotten married the same year her father moved in, a daughter graduating high school just a couple months before, and still needing help from mom. A man who was, after 17 years getting out of prison, adjusting to life and bills and wanting to start his own business. I was supporting or trying to help support almost everyone in my life who depended on me. This was not a request for them. This was my internal dialogue. It began even before all this with me periodically using my company credit card to pay a bill or buy groceries here and there, since I refused to acknowledge my massive inability to handle finances. I knew of other people in the company doing it, and it never got noticed. That's where it all started. I had done it a few times over a couple of years, and it was such small amounts it never got noticed. My supervisor at the time shopped quite a bit and coded it as business expenses, so I figured, why not? The thing about sin is that it rarely happens overnight. You never plan for it. You mess up, and before you realize it, you're planning your own funeral, literally. I don't believe there was one person, one thing, one instance that created the person I had become up to last year. It was a culmination of years of neglect of the voice telling me all the things that were wrong, all the things I had done, all the hurt I had allowed to shape me, all the mistakes, wrong paths, wrong friends, wrong people, wrong choices, and years of performing, putting on a persona to remain in appearance of being in control, strong, resilient, while trying everything in my power to be what everyone around me expected me to be. Over a lifetime, all the tiny moments I didn't realize until it was too late. Because of all of those moments and my lack of truly taking the time to spiritually connect to God, it led me to a culmination of beliefs. This is what my perception over my lifetime of relationships from childhood to adulthood became. And I want to take a side note. This was not what I was taught. This was how my brain interpreted instances and what I allowed myself to become. Fighting is love. Guilt trips are love. Punishment is love. Judgment is love. Control is love. Anger is love. Bitterness is love. Jealousy is love. Love hurts. Love holds grudges. Love never forgets. Love is always giving more of yourself than you expect in return. Love is providing every want, need, or solution for those around you. Love is providing the happiness to others who don't have it in their life. Love is being a problem solver for everyone else. Love is never just being you. Love is never speaking of the fighting or issues. Just ignore it and act happy. Love is not being you, but being what everyone around you wants you to be. Love is putting on a front to convince others to love you. Love is just pretending, putting your best foot forward. You are only as worthy as those around you deem you to be. Your identity is defined by everyone around you approving of you or loving or hating you. These are just a few of the seeds that were planted and grew within me that made up my everyday thoughts. Seeds planted throughout interactions over my lifetime, some in childhood, some in school, some in friendships, some in church, and some in dating. In my mind, based on instances and all relationships in my life, here's what how my brain began to process and believe these types of thoughts. Here's a list of examples of how my brain works almost daily. You must always please people for them to love you, but you must never expect to be pleased. You must always do what others want, but never expect the same in return, for they don't have to sacrifice their wants for you. If you aren't providing for others happiness, joy, money, things, security, stability, support, then you are not worth having around. It does not matter how much you do for others, it will never be enough. You are never enough. You are always expendable and replaceable. You must always make others feel good about themselves, even at the cost of your own self-worth. You are expected to perform. Church, school, family, friends. You must perform so that others can receive joy from you. You are gifted by God, and those gifts some don't have. So you must perform them even if you are uncomfortable, because it is your responsibility to provide joy to those who don't have the same gifts as you. Yelling, fighting, screaming, cursing, insulting, name-calling, guilt trips, punishment for not acting as you are expected to. These are all normal responses from loved ones. It just means they love you and want you to be a better version of yourself. These reactions are the only way to get others who claim to love you to show you love as well. Control, or being right, is the most valuable thing in proving your worth. If you can control others and their reactions to you, you are loved. Coercion through guilt is the only way to get others to prove their love to you. People don't just love you because you are you. You must earn it by being what or who they want you to be. Having a difference of opinion is rarely acceptable, especially if you're a woman disagreeing with a man, whether in your own family, in a relationship, or at church. Your behavior dictates your worth. Your behavior dictates how much you are loved. Your behavior dictates if you are worth keeping around. You are never, and you will never be enough if you aren't providing for those around you. If you don't do for others, then love, attention, approval, and friendship is withheld. Being valued, being loved, being adored, being cherished, just for being you. That is a fairy tale, and it doesn't exist. If someone's having a bad day, you better make it better, or you're selfish. If someone is having a good day and you're not, you absolutely do not talk about it. Suck it up and ignore your own emotions, or you're ruining their good day. You are sought after, and it is your responsibility to provide people their joy that they are missing in their own lives. They will live their life through you since you have these gifts and they do not, and it is your responsibility to allow that to happen. If you don't give enough, people will call you selfish and accuse you of doing nothing for them. If you give too much, you're either enabling them in their weakness or you're a martyr, negative connotation included. People will get angry when you're too open. People will get angry when you shut down and are not open enough. It's not okay to stand up for your needs or wants. If you do, people will call you selfish and self-centered. If you do stand up for yourself, you're self-centered and always only thinking of yourself. You are never, never safe from those closest to you for gossiping about you. Family, friends, loved ones you trust most in this world. If you trust, be prepared to be made a fool of. If you express your opinion, you are seen as belittling, challenging, or argumentative, so keep your mouth shut or agree with others at all times. If I want to do things with friends or loved ones, I must compromise and do only what they enjoy. What I want or need is not normal and does not warrant any respect or acceptance from others. Sounds confusing, right? Now take these thoughts I learned over a 47-year period and replay them daily, constantly, and with every interaction with any other human. That's what my brain does. My soul was tired, and I was tired. My facade was wearing off. I had tried so hard over a lifetime to be what I perceived everyone around me needed or wanted or expected from me. I was strong, secure, happy, go-lucky girl that could handle anything life threw at her. I had spent a lifetime being this girl and not addressing what was bubbling deep inside. I was putting on the front everyone I thought expected from me during each season of my life. But as life happened, I sank further down into a bit of quicksand and I was feeling trapped. I was trying so hard to be the provider for everyone around me because I assumed that was my job, and I was drowning. Back to several years ago. The love of my life had come home. I couldn't screw it up. Money was tight. Kids were at the age of needing more than I could provide. Cost of living was too much. Perceptions and the disapproval of friends and family weighed on me daily. I appeared to have it all, but I wasn't living up to it. And I had a company credit card. What was a tiny crack of sin was the gateway I opened for Satan, who unbeknownst to me had been cultivating and looming and had a dark cloud around me most of my life. to overcome not only me, but literally everyone around me. I began filling in the gaps here and there by using said card. I had allowed life to shape me by my own perception of others' expectations. And all these thoughts that plagued me led me to a place where my addiction won. Not the cool addiction like drugs or alcohol, like a lot of people see and hear about, but an emotional addiction of trying to control others and alter their view of me so that they would love me. And that led me ultimately to the addiction of providing for others so they would love me. And that combined with my refusal to recognize, talk about, or own my own darkness led to an addiction of theft to maintain my perceived ability to support everyone, which led to Satan overtaking me in my weakness and took my addiction of shopping to an unimaginable height. In 2021, the unimaginable happened. We lost the most precious thing any of us had ever known. At only 19 months, the most perfect person that has walked this earth besides our two daughters was taken away in less than 24 hours without any warning. Nothing in all of my years of struggle, pain, growth had prepared me for this. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't fix it. And I couldn't help our daughter. I couldn't comprehend anything that was happening. Only we didn't have time to grasp what had happened and even start to fully mourn. Almost 2 months later to the day, life hit again. Toby's dad got sick. I helped care for him, and then he died. And Toby's sister began a 3-month lawsuit. The financial, the hurt, and on top of it all, her and her mother blamed me for the ordeal. Stress over watching Toby suffer for months on top of losing his father, not being able to help him, to provide for him, which was my job, and not having the time I needed to grieve the greatest loss I had ever experienced. I began to crack. It was all too much. I don't know how to explain what happened during those 6 months, but something in me just stopped. My brain, my ability to handle everything, my ability to process coherent thoughts, my ability to connect to reality, it all went away. Satan stepped in and he used the thing so odd that I hated most in my life to take over any self-control or rational thinking. I became addicted to online shopping. And as I type, I believe now I was also addicted to providing for others to avoid whatever the hell was happening inside of me. I was numb. I did things I don't even remember doing. I found a loophole and a way to send myself money. I shopped. I provided for. I began living life in my mind, a life that brought me fulfillment, all the while still struggling with all the struggles, as the money was not used to cure any of the financial issues. I just used it to provide an empty fulfillment to my dark sadness that I had ignored for years. In October of 2023, I was fired from my job. I lied to every person close to me about why I had lost my job. No two stories were the same. I sank into a space so dark that for weeks and weeks, I would sit on the back porch staring out at the pasture crying, begging God, pleading with him to make it all just go away. When Toby or my parents would talk to me, I would just suck it in and exist or perform how I believed I needed to so they wouldn't see what was in me. In November 2023, I spent 3 weeks preparing to take my own life. I spent hours Googling and researching if it was better to kill yourself and to have your loved ones find out you're a thief. By the way, you'd be surprised how many people actually Googled that very thing. Then Toby got a business partner. They wanted to pay me to work from home. Woohoo! Problem solved. I'm no longer a loser. Except the bills were still there. The new job they provided me with still didn't cover the cost of living. I had to find a way to pay a lawyer secretly to try and continue to cover up what I was hiding, and I had credit card debt. I had to still provide for others and for us with all things life demands. I was living what felt like a double life for months. The pressure building, and I couldn't keep up, but at least I wasn't suicidal. So in April 2024, I left Toby a note that involved a bunch of reasons why I was leaving him. Some of the reasons had true feelings behind them, that I felt unwanted, unworthy, and unloved, but some were just smoke screens to take the heat off myself. I lied to my parents and had them take their camper to a nearby lake, and I disappeared for 2 weeks, lying to each and every person in my life based on the story they knew, and trying desperately to claw my way out of this tsunami I had created. Some of my hurt was real, and some of my frustration was true. But I was incapable of telling each person in my life the truth of all of it. Instead, I gave each person a different story as to why. Now let me just stop and tell you, when someone is legitimately placed in your life by God, it is not wise, don't be Mandy, it is not wise to question or try to run off said person. Toby is smart. He is one of the smartest people I know. I don't believe I actually thought he would fall for any of it, but I did think he would be so pissed, or more honestly, I thought at the time because of my state of mind that he didn't love me enough, that he would just let me walk away. My plan was that sorry, it's funny to me now. My plan was that I would sell our property, secretly pay off my debt, give him some money to ease my guilt. I would lose the only man I ever loved, but it would save him and our kids and families from knowing the darkness that I lived. And I would go live a life of solitude in Alaska or something and write a book about it unless I got eaten by bears, which at this point sounded great. Only Toby did love me. And that meant that my day of reckoning was here. And he's smarter than me. His God-given ability to see through me was not something I had ever encountered in my lifetime. God knew that he had sent me the one person on this planet that could push my buttons in a way that would break me like God needed me to be broken. During that week, he called me out on some lies I had told him at the time. He pushed me to admit what I had said and why, and pushed me to be real. I admitted to Toby what I had planned back in November, while still not admitting why or fully what was happening. And that one admission I voiced out loud led to the only string of sanity that I had left breaking. I fell apart, and God's vice on me began to tighten. He began a chain of events that would lead me to surrender. 2 days later, God woke me from sleep and showed me the first step. He showed me the plan he had made for me back in 1997 when he brought that out of my league guy over to me at city limits. He also showed me how I had not listened, how I had failed to fulfill my part of that plan over and over and over throughout the last 28 years, and how I had misconstrued everything from that point on. During a separate conversation that week, I was also pointed in a direction that would lead to healing. Certain family and friends at the time wanted me committed to an institution, as I was now in the middle of a massive mental breakdown. I, on the other hand, just wanted to be safe. And there was only one place on this earth where I've ever truly just felt safe. I went home to tea. In my first therapy session, my therapist said she wanted me there twice a week so she could monitor me. And if no improvement was made within a few weeks, I would need to consider being committed. I discussed this with Toby, and he showed a faith in me that I had never felt from a man, that I didn't believe at that time was within me. He spent the next several months holding me, talking to me, guiding me through panic attacks, loving me, teaching me, holding me accountable, learning with me, and supporting me. My therapist was shocked at how much difference a month of releasing all my 47 years of anxiety, sadness, and tears helped. I slowly began to mentally improve. Over the next 12 months, I spent several months in therapy, weeks and months locked in a dark room at home, crying, praying, and basically zombified. Our kids stopped talking to us. Blaming him and embarrassed by me. My favorite morning of the last year was when I woke up to find this still out of my league guy who had stood me up at church in 1997 and who had rather strongly voiced to me over the past 7 years that he would never go with me to church, staring creepily at me from the bathroom doorway while brushing his teeth. He's so cute. I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was thinking of going to church and did I want to go. My heart leapt. I said yes, and my fat old butt hadn't moved that quick in a very long time. Over the past year, more lies or secrets I had told were revealed, and as I had tried so desperately to cover up my sin and shame. When you are in a web of deceit, you forget all the lines crossed and desperate attempts at correction you have paved. I have hurt more people than I am probably even aware. I have been humiliated, talked about, laughed at, heard of things loved ones have said about me to strangers, been the root of our family falling further apart, and struggled to keep my depressive thoughts at bay. Friends have left, family has stepped up. Other friends have made me feel small with their comments and judgment. I have been humbled, strangers have been encouraging, and God has held me through it all. Through several paths God gave me, He began to show me the roots of so many lies that I have believed most of my life, and how my perception got so uncontrollably messed up. My list of the above culmination of beliefs that I had developed over the course of my life began to change. God's plan, while rarely easy or pretty, thanks to our own idiocy, will always prevail. I have been blessed with God speaking to me audibly 3 times and physically appearing before me once over the past year. Each time, it was when I was in the depth of despair, and God has taken me further into my season of learning and healing. I was introduced to the term codependency. My therapist officially diagnosed me as an extreme codependent. At first, I was adamant that that was not me, as I thought it meant you depended on a man and couldn't take care of yourself. And as my parents will attest, that was not me. After being hurt by every man in my life, I strongly disagreed. But then I learned it's not being dependent on one person to survive. It's a personality condition formed often at a young age due to circumstances or behaviors in your life that lead you to believe you must control or manipulate others in order to receive love. There's a lot more to it, but that's what mine was. For the first time in my life, I began to see that I had no identity. My only identity was dictated by everyone around me. Through hurt, disappointment, insecurity, and misguided observations, I had developed a very unhealthy, unstable, unrealistic, and damaging view of how any relationship works. On top of that, as I began to dig deeper, I discovered an underlying theme throughout my life. The fear of being unlovable. For some reason, this fear started at a very, very young age. As I grew into my teens, I was 5'9" by 9th grade and didn't weigh maybe 120 pounds. I had zero figure, was not popular, and the only thing going for me was my athletic abilities and my abilities to perform at church. Only one by one, those were stripped away. I was left with nothing moving into my 20s and 30s. Life happened. I was tossed aside for something better, and the insecure little girl became an obsessively insecure young woman who found herself doing anything and everything she could to find someone to love her. Just her. Not what she does for them, not what she provides, not because she is happy and can boost them up, not because she's a good mom or appears to be great at all things church. I became a woman who was raising 2 kids alone, broke, fighting to hold it all together. I tried to stay active in church because that's what good girls do. And despite being pregnant twice before being married, getting married and divorced within a month, and being uneducated and working at whatever job she could find that kept the electricity on, she still had to put on the front of being a good girl so she wouldn't be talked about. I would get super involved in church, knowing I wanted our kids raised in church. I was a natural leader. So I led Bible studies, choirs, preteen, youth, was a children's director, director of women's ministry, and the list goes on. Yet I felt all the ugliness inside. I never felt like I measured up. I wasn't beautiful. I wasn't talented. I wasn't wanted. I wasn't loved like I had always dreamed of. I sucked at being a mom. My kids deserved the absolute best. And I was a poor man's Mary, pretending to be all the things while never truly feeling God's presence. Never truly believing anything I preached or teached. Always feeling like I was less than every other woman, every lie, every deceit, every girl I was ever left for. I was merely a culmination of every mistake I had ever made, and in the eyes of everyone I had ever loved, I would never measure up, whether it was family, friends, or lovers. I now only had one identity, Riley and Peyton's mom. And I was so truly thankful for our girls, and having had T for the short time that I had him, that I felt like something was wrong with me, that I felt so out of place and disconnected. No matter what I tried, no matter who I tried to please, no matter what I accomplished, I never measured up. One morning last year, God woke me up at 3:54 a.m. I know it was him because I could feel a stir I couldn't explain. I procrastinated, I fidgeted, did a quick prayer time, not really paid attention, got up, made coffee, went to the bathroom. I was mad about something that had happened the week before with Toby, and I had the immense urge to look through his phone. I didn't though. I wasted probably half an hour. Right? See, I'm growing. I wasted probably half an hour praying for the urge to leave me. Then it hit me. A video Toby had sent me about how when God wakes you up, you better listen. I finally sat down and opened my Bible app and opened a lesson. In it was Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The part that struck me, the part that I've heard a million times, but never truly understood. Be still. I had done this at church camp. I had preached this. Never once did I actually get it. Then the lesson said to sit with palms up. Imagine Jesus sitting beside you and just be still. I smiled. Okay, Jesus, I hear you. Be still. That can't be that hard. So I sat. My mind was racing. My heartbeat was probably around 150. My anxiety was in overload. Be still. But my kids, Toby, my parents, the thoughts were running around in my mind. Be still. My feet are cold. Oh, I need to get up and get my robe. I'm sweating. I need to go change my robe. Breathe in, breathe out. Someone taught me this. Breathe in, breathe out. Okay, Jesus, what exactly are you trying to tell me? He said, just listen. Be still. Let your lips. My body stilled and my mind quieted. God, show me what you woke me up for. I closed my eyes. My legs were crisscross applesauce. My hands were still fidgety. I'm focusing slowly on my heartbeat and breathing. Then I saw Jesus sitting in front of me, looking at me, not beside me. He looked straight at me and as clear as day said, "What are you afraid of?" And then in the span of about 2 seconds, he flashed in front of me every fear, every hurt, every insecurity, every failed relationship, every thought I've ever had of not being good enough in front of me, every joke made at my expense, every sin I had ever committed, every fight I've ever listened to or cried to, every time I was cheated on, lied to, left, yelled at, told I wasn't Christian enough, every friend who chose someone more popular, every church member who corrected me, judged me, preached to me how I should be, every bit of responsibility I had placed on myself, every lie I'd ever heard Satan tell me about myself. And then my mind went blank. I looked at him and I started crying inconsolably. And I said, I'm afraid of being hurt. My entire life summed up in one sentence. He smiled at me, and without verbally saying a word, he said to me, my precious child, why are you not trusting me? Let it all go and just trust me. I will always protect you. That was my second level on the journey I've been on. So I tried to start trusting God for the first time in my life. Healing, growth, change. None of it happens overnight. I have consistently tried to be better. I've worked, prayed, studied, and continue to try. But 48 years of misconceptions and misperceptions don't change in 1 year. My third and fourth visits from God came over the past 3 months as solitude has graciously engulfed me. February 7th, 2025. After a year of unimaginable stress, hurt, and disappointment, Toby and I separated. I lived in my car for a week. I slept near our Levi. It was a week I will honestly cherish forever, as I was able to feel Levi and talk to him and process his absence for hours on end. I then moved into our rent house. Toby and I didn't speak for about 6 weeks other than business or taxes. I was once again hurt by a man. And then I remembered God's visit last year. He reminded me what he had told me during my first and second visits from him. First, I am to love and to submit to the man he sent me. Not because I am to submit to man, but I am to submit to God and love the man through whatever God was doing in him. He also reminded me that I am to trust God, bar none. I am not to try and control the situation, worry about it, or pester any one person until they see what I see that God has shown me. I am simply to focus on God and let God do the rest. During this time, Toby has had his own growth and renewal. And as he was doing his thing, God taught me the power of prayer. When Toby was giving his testimony, I sat with Levi and we prayed for 3 solid hours for Poppy. Phone off, birds chirping, and God teaching me how to pray, how to trust, how to let go, and how to love, even if you don't believe you are wanted or loved. Over the next 2 months, life, for the first time in my existence, has begun to click. I have gotten my best friend back. He and I have had more in-depth, meaningful, and productive conversations than we've ever had knowing one another. We love deeper and support one another as God intends, not as we want. We pray, we worship, we focus on God's will, not our own. 3 weeks ago, he said the sexiest thing to me any man in my life has ever said to me. He told me, I don't think we should live together until we're married. I didn't hesitate to agree. After 33 years of dating, I have a man leading me as God intends a man to lead. That statement meant more to my little girl heart than any gift he could ever have purchased for me. This weekend for my birthday, my T gave me the sweetest gift I've ever received also. He gave me a knife. It was his most prized possession as it came from one of the only things he received from his father's passing. It touched me in a way I cannot put words on, which is ironic because as you can tell, I'm very wordy. But as I told him, that knife fight led to such a pivotal moment in both our lives separately and in our life together. The time that followed allowed God to move each of us forward in our spiritual growth in ways that probably wouldn't have happened if that fight hadn't occurred. I am beyond blown away at the change, the growth, the love that has come from that argument. And I'm thankful that God allowed it to occur at the exact moment in life when we were both ready and to propel us to level up, focusing on Christ, not ourselves. And God poured into each of us during this time in a way that is mind-boggling. All the things Satan held over me for my entire life have begun to leave. Jealousy, anger, bitterness, distrust, dependence, the need to provide, the need to solve others' problems, the need to be everyone's everything, the need for acceptance and approval. And through this time, God has begun to reveal my identity and my purpose to me. Not who I am expected to be by everyone around me in my life, but who He wants me to be and why I was created. John 15, 1-8 says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If a tree's roots rot, then the trees die. I wanted to see what roots were rotting in me so that I could tend to them. Turn the rot into strength and healing so that I may begin to finally start bearing fruit as I was intended to. I didn't know that's what I was doing until we heard a sermon a few weeks ago that explained it so well. While this past year has been a year of extremes, highs and lows, small achievements and great failures coming back to bite me in the butt, I have learned more, grown closer to God, and felt His presence more than I have in the past 48 years combined. I began to learn where my insecurity stemmed from. I began to see why I accepted how I had been treated as what I deserved. I began to understand and dig to find the roots of every anger, pride, jealousy, hurt, arrogance, self-loathing, sinful, bitter, painful emotion I've lived with for so long. Here's how I allowed the events in my life to form my misperceptions and mold me into who I had become. I took the unhappiness of those around me most of my life, the jealousy of certain people in my life, the expectations of everyone around me based on the words spoken over and to me, and I assumed that as my own, that because that's who they said I was, then that's who I must be. I allowed everyone around me to convince me of my identity instead of seeking God's purpose of who I was created to be. I allowed the imperfections and sins of people in church to scare me into behaving like I deemed was acceptable instead of studying what God intended for me. I allowed myself to simply perform in every area of my life so that others would praise me and I would garner the approval and acceptance based on their praise and adoration for how I performed. I fell into the trap of perception and I allowed myself to begin to try and mold my own personality to match what others expected of me based on if they would be my friend or not, if they would love me or not. I allowed the attention of men, or lack thereof, to mold my identity as a woman, and I tried to mimic what I deemed they wanted based on the amount of attention I got from them. I have lived a life of pleasing others, or rather trying to please or impress others based on my perception of what they expect. I have discovered I have a massive, crippling fear of rejection, of anger, and of fighting. I have two responses: defense mode or flee. I will argue even if I know I'm wrong out of self-preservation, or I will simply run and never return. In that fear has stemmed insecurity, self-hate, self-doubt, codependency, and a manipulative, controlling, obsessive, unhealthy perception I have lived in most of my life. God has begun now to teach me, to mold me, to correct me, and to show me truth, His truth. My outlook has changed over the past year, and while 48 years of habits and unhealthy mindset are extremely hard to overcome, I'm doing it. I may be slow, I may be imperfect, but I'm here. I'm alive. And for the first time maybe ever, I actually like the me that God is making. He has patiently sought to pound into my thick, stubborn skull that I am loved, simply for existing. A concept I still have a hard time accepting, but at least I know it by truth now. God has shown me the power of stay, which was His third visit to me. He has used people around me, pouring into me in the ways that He needed them to speak His presence over me, not through coercion, guilt, anger, punishment, or their own needs or wants. He has taught me that I am beautiful, not because of my physical inherited genes, but because of my heart, that He is slowly opening one layer at a time. He is working on teaching me that I am worthy. I am worthy of doing the work He called me to do when I was 15 or 16 years old. I've never believed it. Not really. I've never felt good enough. I've tried to fake it and to do what I thought He meant, but I was so sorely mistaken. I was doing it with a heart of selfishness so that people would notice me, would praise me, would reward me, and accept me and love me. My heart was hurt and tainted, and I used church and my abilities to garner approval and love. He has taught me that humility is greater than boasting or bragging and speaks louder than any sermon ever preached. He has taught me that in my most desperate times, in my darkest moments, He is the holder of my heart, my soul, and my life. He has taught me that just because I perceive a situation with someone as one way, I very well may be just human enough to misread that situation. And in doing so, I can very well cause damage by acting before seeking Him. He has taught me that those around me are on their own spiritual journeys. No amount of begging, pleading, screaming, yelling, guilt trips, or trying to prove my point will alter that journey to suit my needs. It is not our responsibility to make sure everyone around us is on the same spiritual page as we are at any given time in life. It is simply our responsibility to love as Christ loves and leave the rest to Him. He has taught me the power of prayer. He has taught me that anger is merely hurt with an inappropriate behavioral response that will cause only more hurt. He has taught me what true love is. It's not in the arms of any person, or in the value of anything purchased, or in the company of a room full of people praising you. He has taught me that the only trust I need is in Him, and that if I trust Him, no matter who does what to me, or what happens in life, or where life has me going now, it's for a reason. Either for a lesson for me, or possibly for a lesson for the other person. He has taught me that I have allowed situations or circumstances in my life to turn me bitter, angry, jealous, insecure, feeling worthless, shameful, guilty, and hated. God has shown me that all of these emotions are from Satan None of these feelings are godly, and when I embrace them, I am simply allowing Satan a stronghold on my life and those I deeply love. He has taught me I'm worth loving in the way He has always intended that I be loved. He has taught me that healing is slow and tedious. And while not everyone around me will understand or have the strength, patience, or tolerance for my perfectly imperfect journey, I must stay on the wave He has me on if I ever want to fulfill the true purpose of why I was created. He is showing me that I must let go of all expectations of others, as I most certainly will not live up to them. It does not matter if their expectations are realistic or not, healthy or not, attainable or not. That's God's lesson to them. My lesson is that I don't have to live up to anyone's standards, only God's. And if I continue to draw closer to Him, everything else will happen as He has intended. He is teaching me how to love others as He loves me, without judgment, without punishment, fighting, screaming, running, or guilt. Just love them and pray for them when they can't feel the love you give. What happens when we turn our self-protecting excuses of why we're like we are and give our entire mind, behavior, words, actions, and thoughts to God? He gives us peaceful strength, not prideful power. He gives us focus on Him, not focus on me. He gives us humility, not control. He gives us mercy, not arrogance. He gives us grace, not blame. He gives us forgiveness, not the need to always be right. He gives us love, not trying to constantly prove our worth. He gives us appreciation for situations and opportunities to learn, not anger at how they happened. He gives us calm. How would I define my life before knowing God intimately? A chaotic mess, a series of waves of hurt, insecurity crashing into me that I was grasping to overcome. Now, my life is beautifully chaotic, full of waves washing me into newness, ever cleansing and purifying me. Psalms 42:7, deep calls to deep in the roar of your waterfalls. All your waves and breakers have swept over me. I have lived my life in fear. Fear of others' expectations of me, fear of confrontation, fear of retribution for not acting how others believe I should act, fear of abandonment, fear of not living up to others' demands, fear of not being what everyone else expects me to be, fear of not being loved, fear of not being accepted, fear of not living up to expectations. I was taught fear from birth based on the rigidity of Christianity that governed my life in every church I was ever in, which was and taught to me in every aspect of life. But 1 John 4:18 says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. Well-formed love banishes fear. Since fear is crippling, a fearful life, a fear of death, a fear of judgment is a life not yet fully formed in love. God is releasing me slowly of all the fear in my life. Well, except for the fear of snakes. I no longer fear other people's judgments or perceptions of me or demands of me. I simply strive to love, to show God's mercy, grace, and love to those He chooses to send to me. I continue to struggle daily with overcoming the mindset that has been so ingrained in me for so long. I struggle with depression, feeling of not being happy, worry about every single other person around me agreeing or approving of me, consuming thoughts of if I'm saying things right or doing what others deem acceptable. To some degree, it was a safe place for me because it's all I've ever known. But I have seen the last few months that those behaviors were also a part of my idols. Drop by drop, I am plunging further into the ocean of God's unending grace, mercy, warmth, peace, and love. I'm allowing his waves of love and acceptance to wash over me into a newness that I have chased my entire life and am just now starting to feel. My testimony is ever evolving. It will move as the waves come and go, both with new experiences and my consequences to come for my sins of my past. I will welcome all lessons as I know God has a plan for them in my life, and he has a purpose for every lesson I learn. For those who aren't familiar with the Bema seat, the Bema seat is a time of reckoning and reward for believers, where their deeds will be judged, not to determine their salvation, but to determine the quality and value of their service for Christ. 2 Corinthians 5:10 says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due him for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad." I know all the bad I've done. I have been a horrible mother, hurting my children, failing them and not seeking God first to trust how to mentor, raise, and support them. To disappointing and not reflecting Christ truly to friends that God sent me, allowing our own human interest and desires to turn us into gossips, hypocrites, and self-righteous beings. I have failed by trying to control others, using manipulation and guilt to garner affection, love, and acceptance. I have believed every lie Satan has ever told me over my life about myself and allowing it to make me hard, calloused, judgmental, jealous, holding everyone around me accountable per Old Testament law instead of newness and love as Jesus intends. Judging my parents for just being human, allowing their faults to define my personality in life based on my own perspective of life instead of just talking to them. Judging and hating family for their lack of spiritual maturity, putting loved ones through a hell I never truly intended to put them through. From drugs to premarital sex, theft, self-righteousness, self-protection, over-loving others as Christ did, seeking friendships that were not rooted in Christ but rooted in others' acceptance of me, failing the man God sent me over and over again over the span of 28 years, and not standing firm in Christ's direction and purpose for us, ignoring God's guidance, thinking I could fix it or fix things for him before God was done teaching him in his own way, leaving him when God was telling me to stay and love him through it, allowing his behaviors to mold me instead of allowing God to use me to love him. I've mourned over all of these. I've grieved over it. I've asked for forgiveness. And by God's mercy and grace, God has cast all my past sins from the east to the west. Now I only want to seek God and his plan first in all things in my life, from my personality to my actions to loving others. I want to sit at the Bema seat when the time comes, and I want to bow at Jesus' feet and tell him all I've done. I want to apologize to him face to face for being so lost in my perceptions and how I viewed life. And I want to tell him thank you for holding me, for loving me, for pursuing me, for teaching me over the past year. I want to thank him for his constant pursuit of me over my lifetime. And I want to then hold out my hands, bow my head, and show my Father all the things I did with these lessons he has allowed me to face and conquer and learn. I want to be able to show him how I turned it around and how I listened, and how I took to heart his instruction and became the woman he has been waiting for me to be for 48 years. I want to praise him and tell him how much I love him by the fruits of my labor that I hope the next 50 years of my life will bring. As I think of the Bema seat, I know that I still have to face the consequences of all the hurt I've caused. but to not acknowledge all God has changed in me and done for me and brought me through. For me to wait until I'm on the other side of it would be a slap in the face to Him. I want to share it. I want to not worry about how my story or me telling it will affect others. I want to break the generational curses on both sides of our family of believing the lies of Satan. And I am breaking free of the fear that has haunted me my entire life. I'm letting go of insecurity, judgment, living in anger, or living in a mindset that negates what Jesus did by choosing to give His life for me. Colossians 3:8 says, "But now you must rid yourself of all things such as anger, rage, malice, slander, and obscene talk." 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, "And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." So if all things like anger, rage, malice, slander, anxiety are not of God, but Satan uses those, and love is the greatest of all the emotions, shouldn't we focus more on it than any other emotion in our life? Stop allowing the negative, nasty emotions to rule and allow God's ultimate emotion, love, to lead the way to ministering to ourselves and to others. In my devotional this morning, God sent me this message. Who else needs to hear that they are known and loved by God? That redemption is available for them too. That real peace is only found in His presence. I laughed because God was pointing me to my testimony and where my purpose is. My only prayer now is that He can use my story, our story, for one thing and one thing only, to further His kingdom, to reach the men and women who feel unworthy, undeserving, neglected, forgotten, lost, or unloved, or maybe finding themselves in a situation that is too great to bear. I want to love the unlovable and show them how our God loves them and how beautiful and cherished they are. Okay, I'm done.
So, before Amanda got up, we went in the prayer room there and we had prayer. Because Amanda was nervous, anxious. Now we know why.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Good job.
What we like to do in these situations, you know, during this time, after testimonies, we like to open it up, and if God's impressed upon you to say anything, you know, to Amanda, if you've been helped, just anything the Spirit might lay on your heart to share, we like to do that. So, with that being said, if God spoke to you to Amanda today, be a good time to let her know. Miss Linda.
From the minute I met
You can come to the corner, Amanda.
Well, that's the way I